The human code. Anthropometry. Anthropometry, from Greek anthropos, human, and metron, measure, refers to the measurement of the human individual. Anthropometry involves the systematic measurement of the physical properties of the human body, primarily dimensional descriptors of body size and shape. Humane Science Masterclass by Leonardo da Vinci. The dimensions of the human body are to be considered in the length, and not in the breadth. In the wonderful works of nature, which we endeavor to imitate, we cannot find in any species, any part which is precisely similar to the same part of another. The nature of the form of bodies is dual. It may be divided into the proportion of the parts to each other, which must correspond with the whole, and to the governance of the motion, which is expressive of what passes within the mind of the living figure. The nature of the proportion of parts is of the same two types, and these are again equality and governance. By equality is meant that you do not perplex the parts of a young subject with those of old age, nor chubby ones with those that are lean. And moreover, you do not blend the robust and firm muscles of a man with feminine softness. The governance of the motions and parts of a strong man should be such as to express his perfect state of health. Measure upon yourself the proportion of the parts. If you find any of them defective, note it down, and be very careful to avoid designing it in your own compositions. For this is recognized as a common mistake that painters make, as they tend to delight in the imitation of themselves. Self-awareness. It is an acknowledged fact that we perceive errors in the works of others more easily than in our own. Therefore, an artist ought to be well instructed in perspective, and acquire a perfect knowledge of the dimensions of the human body. They should also be good architects, at least as far as it concerns the outward shape of buildings, with their different parts, and where they are deficient, they ought not to neglect taking drawings from nature. It will be useful also to have a mirror next to them when they design, to look often at their work reflected in it, which being seen the contrary way, will appear as the work of another hand, and will better show their faults. Furthermore, it is practical to rest regularly, and take some relaxation, so their judgment may be clearer at their return, for too great application and sitting still is sometimes the cause of many gross errors. Self-reflection. When you wish to know if your design is like the object you mean to represent, use a mirror to carefully compare the original and your imitation. You see, upon a flat mirror, the representation of things have even appearances, and as they are flipped horizontally, they give the idea of something beyond their form. Their reflection in the mirror, by means of lines and shades, gives us the representation of things as if they were real. As we work, colors tend to appear in different lights, and we experience shades much stronger than they are seen from within that mirror. Through their reflection, we have the opportunity to see our mistakes, and give to our design an appearance similar to what we see in nature. We may also reflect on nature itself through a large mirror, and imitate it within our work. When something is flipped, it shows its qualities in a manner as if it is seen through self-reflection. That reflection upon the self becomes a teacher, and helps us distinguish any kind of object through its true lights and shades. Looking through that mirror with our eyes half closed, or even better by employing just one eye, helps us better approach colors and shadows which may appear lighter or darker than they are. On the other hand, seeing something directly through both eyes overwhelms our judgment, which tends to surround it fully, and gets absorbed by even the smallest details. Classical proportions. Vitruvius was a Roman author, architect, and engineer during the 1st century BC. He has written a collection of books on architecture, which are dedicated to his patron, the Emperor Caesar Augustus, as a guide for building social projects. As the only treatise on architecture to survive from antiquity, it has been regarded since the Renaissance as the first book on architectural theory, as well as a major source on the canon of classical architecture. It combines the knowledge and views of many antique writers, Roman and Greeks, on the arts, natural history and building technology. Vitruvius cites many authorities throughout the text, often praising Greek architects for their development of temple building, and their three classical orders, the Doric, Ionic and Corinthian. Vitruvius puts in his work on architecture that the measurements of humans are in nature distributed approximately in this manner. 4 digits make 1 palm. 4 palms make 1 foot. 6 palms multiplied by 4 digits, or the sum of 24 fingers, make 1 angular unit, which is the forearm length, from the tip of the middle finger to the bottom of the elbow. 6 palms multiplied by 4 angular units, or the sum of 24 palms, make a squared unit, which is the height and breadth of a human, with the arms straight out, and the feet standing erect together. 4 angular units make 2 human steps. 4 angular units make a squared unit. And these measurements are in their buildings. Schematic analysis. The Proportions of the Human Body is a drawing I made around 1490, after reading Vitruvius Pollio's insightful writings. It depicts a human in 2 superimposed positions, with his arms and legs in different angles, and inscribed in a circle and square. It represents a practical system of proportions of the human body. The points determining these proportions are marked with lines on the drawing. Below the drawing is a single line, equal to a side of the square, and divided into 4 units, of which the outer 2 are divided into 6 palms each. The outermost 2 palms, which have the mirror text annotation, palmi, are divided into 4 fingers each, annotated as diti, or digits. This image demonstrates the blend of mathematics and art during the Renaissance, and my deep understanding of proportions. In addition, this picture depicts how the human body is analogous to the design systems, which can be witnessed across the whole universe, as it features three distinct design tendencies. The first is our ability for coherent, and therefore cyclical conscience. The second is our capability to observe along the plane in linear directions, which are represented by the square. And our third tendency gives us autonomy, which can only be possible through symmetry. That angular balance is the base of all forms of synthesis, and it is shown in my drawing by the imaginary triangle, which can be constructed by our lower extremities. As I note on my human canon, if you open your legs enough, that your head is lowered by 1/14 of your height, and raise your hands enough, that your extended fingers touch the line of the top of your head. Know that a circle can be imagined, with the center of your extended limbs the navel, and the space between the legs will be an equilateral triangle. It may be noticed by examining the drawing, that the human arms and legs can be positioned in 16 different poses. The pose, with the arms straight out, and the feet together, is seen to be inscribed in the superimposed square. On the other hand, the spread eagle pose is seen to be inscribed in the superimposed circle. Proportional Renaissance. With the total height being taken as unit, my proportions, which are applicable all over the body, are 1, 1/2, 1/4, 1/6, 1/7, 1/8, 1/10, 1/14. These numbers are taken from Vitruvius, with the exception of 1/7, which is my estimation for the length of the foot, and the distance between collarbone and hairline. The length of the foot is given by Vitruvius as 1/6, if the legs are spread in the appropriate angle. 1/6 is calculated approximately around 0.1667, and 1/7 is close to 0.1417. But actually, both numbers are rounded estimations of fractional values, which truly expand to an infinite sequence. For practical reasons, I deliberately allowed this tolerance, preferring simple fractions over more complicated numbers. The work of an artist, after all, is to establish practicality over an infinite continuity which characterizes life. No measure, or symbol, can ever be a perfect or ideal representation of nature. Moreover, I found through practice, and depict with my drawing, that the human measurements cannot be mere theoretic, and as such, they do not follow precisely the description of the ancient text. I observed that the square cannot have the same center as the circle, but is centered at the genitals. This adjustment became my innovation, and what distinguishes this canon from earlier illustrations, although if you read the rest of the text by Vitruvius, you'll realize that I just saw the whole picture. Vitruvius mentioned this derivation in another manner, while he described the way that ancient Greeks designed the columns of their temples. After all, columns stand as a representation of the human state, and all classical columns carry an entasis between their limits, that is to say, an intense tension at their middle, which establishes a curvature. In the human figure, that tendency gives an entasis horizontally and vertically. That curvature defines all organic forms, and in architecture, it signifies the bond between humans and nature. I also depart from Vitruvius by drawing the arms raised to a position in which the fingertips are leveled with the top of the head, implying that our practical intentions for perfection acquire meaning when they reach the height of our physical limits. Vitruvius had an orthodox, and much more classical angle, in which the arms and feet form crossing lines, passing through the navel. In the classical approach, simplicity tended to be more important than complexity, and orthodox methodologies, which are those that can easily be converted to symbols, tended to become more important than actuality. Nevertheless, through my canon, we can witness how the design of the human body itself simplifies any form of complexity through proportionality, and not mere schematic symbolism. Proportionality, which in other words can be stated as inheritance, is a measure of critical importance in nature, as nothing would exist without it. Find a link, with the notes of this masterclass, on the description of this video. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, remember to subscribe on this YouTube channel for more.